conference. So the first thing I wanted to say was I do recognise the very serious level of concern and distress that this tragic incident yesterday at the Ed Bush Football Stadium in West Bay has caused. It is hard to imagine how alarming it would have been to have been there, and my heart goes out to all of you who witnessed and were part of it, and especially, as I know, there were a lot of families there and people with small children, and as a mother myself, I find it amazing that some people have actually come back to work today, including in this government building, despite having been through that. We have also been very aware in the conversations that we've had over recent hours about the sterling efforts of our law enforcement, our medical personnel, and indeed a lot of other people who were there at the event who immediately responded. I think it was a community response, and I wanted today formally to recognise everybody who was part of that response, because I think it counted for a lot. I can imagine there may be some people out there who are still feeling very distressed, and if that is the case, we are making sure we have counselling available in our schools particularly, but also through other services. For me as Governor, with my responsibility for security on these islands, I join all of you in recognising that this feels like a watershed moment. It feels like we have in some way had a glimpse through a window into what could happen if the threats that we face from crime and criminality and other dangers, and if the menace continues to increase, particularly involving violence and guns. I think we've all looked through that window and we are united in believing that is not somewhere that the communities in Cayman are prepared to countenance going. And if we want to avoid that, we're going to need to work together. So my real message to you is, let's see what more we can do together. We have for some time, and certainly since I have been here since last April, but way before that, we have been working together effectively with the police, with the customs and border agencies, with the coast guards, with the schools and the medical professionals, with so many people who are responsible, including our emergency services, for trying to combat these threats that we face. And the sort of response we've been discussing involves prevention, obviously, awareness, including of the awareness of how are these guns, particularly these dangerous guns, these big guns, getting into our islands. We need better awareness of that. What does the legislation provide? And legislation is certainly an area we will be looking at again. And of course, enforcement, where we are lucky to have extremely competent and well-trained police force, not just the officers who are out there, but the investigators and the detectives and the ballistics unit and everybody behind them. So we are lucky to have that, but it will only be successful if we work together. And the final thing I wanted to say to start this is that we know that everybody in the community needs to work together and share information if we are going to tackle this. because we cannot do prevention or enforcement or any of the other important policies that we are pushing forward if we do not have the information on the people we need to go after, the people we need to help and support. And so I would appeal to all of you out there listening today, if you have information that you think can help us to stop these kind of events happening and to make sure that this has happened, it's a tragedy, but we need to make sure it will not happen again. If you have information, however small, please do come and share it with us. And now I know that many people will be wanting to hear from my colleague, Police Commissioner Walton, so I'm going to turn over to you, sir.
Thank you, Governor. Just let me express sincere sympathy and concerns for all the families that were at the stadium last night, all the victims, the 7 victims, and their family members. This truly was an unprecedented occurrence in the Cayman Islands. It's never happened before where we've had an incident of this magnitude at such a public event, such as a football match. So just after 9:04 p.m. last night, we got the call of a shooting at the Ed Bush football stadium in West Bay. Our officers responded in quick time, along with our medical, our ambulance, paramedics colleagues. And what we have since learned is that we had a section within the Ed Bush Stadium, which is more to the northeast corner, the changing rooms, not in the stands itself, where typical is expected that spectators would sit, but in the far corner to the northeast, a group of persons had congregated there watching the football match, and we're working on a hypothesis that a single shooter came across a open pasture which adjoins the Ed Bush field and opened fire on that group. We are aware, we think this is based on the working an investigative hypothesis that this was clearly a targeted attack, and because of the indiscriminate shooting and not having regard to human life, the only interest of the shooter was to try to get an individual or individuals that were just happened there watching a football match among 20 to 25 persons. But it was clearly a targeted attack, and that's the working hypothesis that we're operating on at the moment. We have recovered multiple spent casings from the scene, which is in this open pasture, not on the football stadium side. And our crime scene officers, we kept that all night. We kept the scene all night under police guard, and we started last night with the crime scene investigation, and then as well as continued into this morning. I was there this morning myself, just having a look at the location and see, what has taken place. 7 victims were all transported via private vehicles to our Health Service Authority, where they were all treated. And I can say that since last night, certainly two were discharged today, and that may now amount to 4. I understand there's a total of 4 now discharged from the CEO of the Health Service Authority. So we now have 4 out of the 7 have since been discharged, whilst 3 remain under care. The injuries, whilst serious and stable, this could have gone horribly bad, if you can imagine, where this shooter would think it necessary to get after his target, would shoot into a group of 20 to 25 persons just to get after his target and have no regard to human life whatsoever. And we were working with on the basis that we had approximately 200 to 300 persons in attendance at the football match. The incident occurred at the start of the second half. So the first half was over and it was halftime, and just about the second half was just about to start when the incident took place. At the moment, we've made no arrests as of this time. However, we've opened a major incident room, opened very much as early as we could, with 20 detectives. In addition, I had to call out detectives, additional detectives to work on the case this morning. In addition to that, we have a proactive team, heightened armed units, additional armed units that I will be calling out to help stem this violence. I attended the CFA office this morning, and although the president and the other, Mr. Tinoco, is currently overseas with the football team, I've reached out to them professionally to see what is it we can do to assist them and support them. I'm aware, I think that press release has already gone out, but having spoken to Mr. Tinoco, he did tell me it was okay, that the CFA has suspended all football operations, and those football operations are suspended until at least next Tuesday, until we can meet with them to see what we can do to help or support them in that regard. This is very much a live investigation. It is being treated at the very highest level, as I've said in my opening remarks, unprecedented. We've never seen anything like this before. We certainly had no indication that we have a uptick in our gang violence and tensions at the moment, that it would spill over into such a public domain. And we would all be aware of the previous shootings, which were fairly contained among themselves between the 2 or 3 gangs. This is certainly a whole different issue we're dealing with at the moment. I want to give the public reassurance that certainly as Commissioner of Police, I will certainly spare no expense when it comes to having additional officers come in on duty, provide that extra deployment at nights, extra investigative capabilities we need to, all the forensic investigative work that has to be done, and we will do everything in our endeavor to bring this person or persons to justice.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Kirk-Woolton. I think I'm handing over now to the Honourable Leader of the Opposition, Mr. Roy McTaggart.
Thank you very much.
Thank you too.
On behalf of the opposition, our hearts go out to the victims of the recent shooting, and we fervently hope that for their swift recovery. Our thoughts and prayers are with them and their families during a very difficult time. As has been mentioned before, what happened last night is something we've never seen in this country before, and something personally I had never hoped was possible in Cayman. But yes, it's happened, and it's a different set of circumstances, a different ball game that we're dealing with today as a result of that. It's the first time and something like this has happened to us in this country. But I'm also positive today that, and I have confidence that RCIPS will work to swiftly appoint and apprehend the perpetrators and anyone else involved in this heinous act of violence. The Commissioner and RCIPS, they have our full support and our confidence. And so I want to give thanks to the Premier for inviting me to sit here on this panel primarily to show and to demonstrate to the country that all 19 of us in Parliament, we are joined up together in unison and unity to try and combat this scourge and bring this kind of violence to an end. I'm delighted to be here and to stand shoulder to shoulder with the government and assure them of the support of the opposition in tackling this issue that we have before us. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Leader of the Opposition. We turn now to our Premier, the Honourable Juliana McConaughey.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. Indeed, the honour and privilege is mine, despite the sadness and the gravity of the occasion that we have facing us as a country here today. I certainly wish to go on record to thanking all of my colleagues, all 18 of them on both sides of the House, for seeing the importance of this, that we suspended Parliament for the lunch hour to have a meeting which we just concluded in this building in the Cabinet Room to get a proper and full briefing from our Commissioner. It was co-chaired by the Governor and myself, and I'm really, really saddened to see and to hear the full details of this most brazen incident that occurred at the Ed Bush playing field last night. We knew from time to time that there had been groupings which evolved into some form of gangs, not necessarily the ones that we can easily identify and reliably inform by their tattoos or by the commonalities of open conspicuous displays, but the fact that crime seems to be the modus operandi have gotten us where it is today. I wish to extend most certainly on behalf of the entire government our most sincere and deepest condolences, and certainly continue to pledge our most ardent and fervent prayers to all and sundry. I also want to use this forum and indeed this opportunity to convey that Cayman has always succeeded in many different areas, and this will be no different. Crime is everybody's business. This is not a time to be dividing the country. This is not a time, pardon the pun, to be playing political football, and that's why it's so important for my colleague to be here, including my parliamentary secretaries who are also here. Cayman Crime Stoppers have come to the forefront, I'm informed, through the Commissioner, have offered a reward for information leading to the arrest of this person or persons, whichever is confirmed through the investigator diligent work of our Commissioner, who has the entire complete support of the government, not only from a psychological perspective, but from a financial perspective as well. We in the government have quickly caucused, and we have agreed to add an additional $200,000, bringing an aggregate sum to $250,000, 250, and those are Cayman Islands dollars, for the successful delivery and provision of information that leads to the arrest. We don't believe that we can pay our way out of many things, but this is a novelty for Cayman, one that we want to nip immediately in the bud. Cayman is a place that's known for its sun, its sea, serenity, and tranquility. We know that there have been operative agents from different aspects of our social stratification whose main modus operandi is to divide this country. If there's nothing else that this government gets done, we're going to keep Cayman united. When I say Cayman, I mean Caymanians, residents, and transit workers. We're human beings first and foremost. And when one of our persons go down, that is something that catches our attention. We've never had a situation where we've had 7, 8 persons that have gone down. Football is a cultural part of Cayman. It's like cricket in the UK. And so when we have these type of activities, Caymanians are accustomed, residents and visitors, of going and enjoying these activities. And I can tell you, this government in its plurality, inclusive of the opposition, will have a zero tolerance for this type of behavior in this jurisdiction. We believe that we're not only here to lead and make those difficult decisions. It's not a popularity contest, and I'm happy that I have this honor and privilege to serve with Her Excellency the Governor at this time, who in case you have not noticed, is a no-nonsense type of governor, and good governance is at the forefront of her agenda per se, and she is completely on board with us with eradicating this type of unwelcome behavior in Cayman. It does not matter whether it's West Bay, Georgetown, Easton, South Sound, or Cayman Brac or Little Cayman. Out of many, we're one people, and we must be our brothers and sisters keepers. That then takes me to the next point that I wish to convey here today. This level of violence is not normal. Let me say that again. This level of violence is not normal, neither is it acceptable. And you don't have to be an avid supporter of the government. You just have to be a lover of human beings and have that respect for life. If you are in the know, and I've been living in the Cayman Islands long enough to know that there's hardly anything that happens that at least one person does not know. Please do the best service ever and come forward to the commissioner and those he may have delegated to receive the information so that we can do as we've done in so many different things that we've tackled in the world thought we could not do. When our seamen went to sea, they weren't educated, but yet they were the most coveted persons. When our students go off to university, many of them end up in the top 1%. When the world was scrambling for economic recovery, we had the Vassal Johnsons of the decades back that started the foundations for the economic finance success that we have today. We now have, yet again, a Caymanian commissioner. He has our full unwavering support, and whatever it takes. If it means bringing in a special task force, he being the competent person he is, feels that it's not necessary at this time. But if that becomes necessary, rest assured, Commissioner, you have the backing of the entire 19 members of Parliament, Speaker inclusive, to support such an event. We will keep Cayman to a place where we can hold our heads high, where we can walk our streets with families. Martin Luther said he had a dream. You know, it was to eradicate racism. Thank God we don't have to have a forum here today for that. But we also have a dream where Cayman continues to be able to celebrate its culture, to preserve its environment, and to remove the criminals from our society. It will be in accordance to our penal code. We do have legislation in. I haven't practiced for a while, but if memory serves me right, it's $500,000 maximum or 20 years for gang membership. And we will be having those discussions with the Attorney General, with the Commissioner of Police, that if that is not sufficient or there's further assistance that needed to test the membership of gangs to see where this legislation meets what is intended to meet, we are not going to shy away from that. We've also actively contemplated a tried methodology of times past, that of gun amnesty. I know there's some in support and some is against, but even if that results in one gun, that's one gun less that our commissioner has to worry about. And so I would obviously leave the operational to him, but he would know that he has the support with the government with that as well. And you in the public, as I've said, crime is everybody's business. We do not have the panacea and every solution. But one thing we do have, and that is the backbone to face these problems front on, cost it what it may. Cayman will not be destroyed by the minority who has no regard for life. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Premier, and everybody else in the panel for those very strong words, very united front. We have a number of members of the media here present with us today, and we're going to, as the Governor mentioned, we're keeping it to about 45 minutes total, the press conference, but we're going to invite members of the media up now. I don't know who would like to go first. I don't actually know your name, but if you could come to the podium and introduce yourself, I appreciate that.
Joel Adams, Newark Cayman Compass. Commissioner Walton, you said thank you for outlining in so much detail the facts that you have shared, and you shared your investigative theory at the beginning of your contribution, but then at the end, you were keen to say that you wanted the community support to bring this person or persons to justice. Is it accurate to say that the police is not yet firm in its conviction that there is a single gunman, that it might have been more than one gunman?
So at the very moment, the investigation points to the working hypothesis is a single gun shooter.
Person.
But that's not to say others weren't involved in assisting in terms of getaway. But that would be speculative at this moment. We're working on a hypothesis. There's one individual at this very moment.
And briefly, while I have you, can you confirm whether...
That may change during investigation.
Of course.
Yeah.
And can you confirm whether any or all of the 7 victims were intended victims of the shooter?
So what I've said is we've had 7 victims, all hospitalized, and we're working on a investigative hypothesis that at least 2 were intended targets.
Thank you very much. And
Just a final question,
Yeah.
Gerald, if you don't mind. We're
Yeah,
gonna
of
hand
course.
over to somebody else.
are those victims being provided any police protection, either at home or in hospital?
We have provided security at the hospital. We're in constant dialogue with our HSA colleagues, and that's as far as I will take that.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. So I suppose, Andrell Harris, your representative has already spoken. I don't know, maybe at the end if there's more time. It's Wendy Ledger. I see you standing. Would you step forward with a couple of your questions?
Don't want to waste time. Got a lot of questions. First of all, can I ask the Commissioner, previous Commissioners have always said that we've never had more than 24 people that are causing the worst trouble, doing the worst shooting. Is that situation still the same, or has the numbers gone up? Is it the same groups? Is it different groups?
So, in fact, I was early this morning at a one-on-one briefing in terms of my intelligence unit, and just looking at making sure I understood the landscape, the gang landscape. So what I can say, we're working with at least 4 known gangs within the Cayman Islands, 2 in Georgetown, 2 in the district of West Bay, but with a combination seemingly now that one of those West Bay gangs have combined with the 2 Georgetown gangs to make one single gang versus one of the 2 gangs in West Bay. So essentially 3 gangs have merged against 1 gang in West Bay. That's the hypothesis, working hypothesis at the moment. That group looks to be, at this very moment, that merger looks to be about 40 people.
Okay, there are already names on the road about who the suspect's tutor is. I mean, does the RCIPS have a target?
So there will be all sorts of names or information coming our way. We take that information. We look at what we're getting ourselves from our own internal controls and information control and mechanism. And that's all in the major incident room where we evaluate, assess based on our intelligence. But we cannot just speculate as to who has done this. We have a line of inquiry, and that we will, or series of lines of inquiries that will be exhausted.
So you're not necessarily looking for one specific person at this point?
Not at this very point. No.
Okay, do you have any ballistic information about the type of gun that was used or the caliber of the ammunition?
So the answer on the ballistic is no at this time. However, I should have that certainly by tomorrow, the latest. But from the preliminary examination, it looks like a semi-automatic 9mm.
Wendy, I think just in the
Just
interest
one.
of fairness. Okay, one more.
Yeah, they're real quick. I'm doing quick fires.
Just one more.
Is there CCTV at Ed Bush?
Is there CCTV at Ed Bush?
Yeah.
We're exploring that options. I've certainly seen some cameras there. around the stadium, so we're exploring. But there is CCTV there. Whether they're working, I have to exhaust. We'll
Okay.
be looking at that.
I just
Thank
have
you
one
so
final
much,
que-
Wendy. That actually
one
leads
final-
on to a question from the Mile Road. Sorry, Wendy. I'm sure the shooter didn't walk there. This is Cayman Mile Road, Sandra Catron. We recently also saw guys with AK-47s in town outside a nightclub who left in a white car. What are they doing to track these vehicles down through CCTV or otherwise?
So in this case, I think based on, well, certainly having met with my investigators and the hypothesis, the working hypothesis at this very moment is that that was someone on foot within that general area who knows that area really well. Mm-hmm. You have to know the area really well because it's an open pasture, and the individual would have had to come through that open pasture from a road that runs parallel with that, Captain Joan Osbert Drive. So it has to be someone who's very familiar with that to trek across that pasture, and certainly familiar that persons are hanging out at that corner in front of that building.
Thank you, Commissioner. And then another one. EMS, Emergency Medical Services, said they took 2 persons to the hospital, but RCIPS has made no mention of that. They are only saying 7 went by private car. So she's suggesting that she's not sure if 2 did indeed go by ambulance, because there was an indication all of them went by private car.
Yes, I think what happened there, the confusion, because we initially had 2, and then it started to increase. We had people, I suppose, trickling into the hospital, so it would have been 2 via ambulance. Sorry if there's any confusion there. And 5 by private vehicles.
That makes sense.
So at one point we had information there were 2 victims, then that increased to 6, and then it went to 7 victims. So as you can imagine, and is chaos trying to unravel all of what has taken place took a bit of time to unravel
Going
that.
on. Thank you, Commissioner. Mr. Jeff Eubanks from Radio Cayman. Welcome, Jeff.
Good afternoon to the panel. Has there been an emergency convening of the National Security Council regarding this matter?
Yes, we will convene the NSC tomorrow morning.
To the Commissioner of Police, the Premier made statement that you have the backing of the entire Parliament to bring in a special task force should you require that help. And you've said that you don't think that that is needed at this time. What needs to happen before you decide to quote-unquote flip that switch that you need more help?
It's a valid question, and what I will say at this moment, I am very confident. I've got a lot of trust and confidence in my teams. I've got a very well-trained firearms response unit, well-trained commanders to manage that unit, well-trained detectives, and I am confident with the staff that I have at the moment. We certainly will be looking at in terms of whether or not we need to increase our firearms capabilities, capacity levels there, and that's already ongoing discussions.
2 final questions. In January, police said the outstanding numbers of guns that are on the street that they're aware of are some 89 guns. Is this still the number, or do you have any conclusions if the gun that was used was one of the 89 that you already know about, or is this a different gun entirely?
I think I mentioned earlier that I don't have the ballistic information because that has not yet been, I suppose, revealed. But I'm hoping by tomorrow I will know whether or not that's a new gun or it's one of the existing guns. But you're correct, because we've said that previously. As of today, we are aware that there are at least 8 or 9 guns in circulation that have been previously used that we have in our ballistic system in the Cayman Islands that we have not recovered.
Was there any indication that the RCIPS is aware about amongst local gangs that could have led to this incident, something specific amongst these groups, or is this just a general assumption that this is gang-related activity?
Well, I can't get into specifics, but I think that we have to look at all the information that's coming in, and then we look at what the gang activity is, and everything suggests to us that this was a deliberate attack on certainly, if not 2, at least 1 person in that group.
How would you
Ms.
describe
Rebanks,
the?
we are going
Oh,
to,
sorry.
That is Mr. Ralph Lewis. Yes, they are. Ms. Lewis from the Canadian Times. Welcome.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me here. It's clear that we have a gang problem, and my focus is more on the safety of the community. What measures are being put in place to ensure that we're comfortable and safety is going to be there for those of us who live here in our community?
Thank you very much, Mr. Lewis. Very valid question. And that's, as I started in my speech earlier, this was unprecedented. We had never seen anything like this before in terms of where it went into such a public domain, such as a sporting event. What I will say, certainly all previous occurrences as far as the shootings have all been very much confined between the two gangs. We are looking at, there's going to certainly be a targeted approach to these gangs. We'll be looking at disruptive patrols. We've got patrols, heightened armed patrols in the hotspot areas, and that will continue.
I would also add, if I may, that we are aware that the rise in this kind of gang or group-related activity and general criminality means that we need to look in the longer term, and this is something that Police Commissioner and I and colleagues around the Cabinet table have been looking at very seriously, is how do we prevent this continuing to escalate, which means working with colleagues in education and health and mental health and the probation services, etc., etc. And that is something that we will speed up that activity to make sure that we have clear policies to tackle it.
Thank you, Governor. Just one more question for you. Do you think we need UK assistance at this time?
Well, yeah, this sort of comes back to your point about the task force, I think. I mean, what I would say is that the UK police have a really close relationship with RSIPs. It's been ongoing for a long time. It involves talking about strategy, capacity building, some training, a lot of interaction with Police Commissioner, for whom the UK police, I have to say, have really great respect. So I think very often these things, it's not about, sending over 10 people in a task force. It's about thinking, how are we working together on the ballistics and the forensics and the cyber analysis and the investigation, and how can we support each other on that? And that's something we're absolutely committed to continuing to do.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your questions. We'll invite up Mr. Alric Lindsay as well. So there's a couple of questions to the panel. Welcome, Alric.
Yeah, I have two short questions, and good afternoon. I'm from Loop Caribbean and Loop Cayman. So the first question is for the police commissioner. We know that in the neighborhoods, we talk about the relationship between the police and the community. How would you describe the relationship between the police force and the community at the moment in terms of the level of trust? Because the issue in the past has been that witnesses do not want to give information to the police because they feel that the police will pass information on to the perpetrator. So how would you describe that relationship now?
So I think there are two distinct issues there. One is witnesses and one is about information. So one there as far as information management. So I'll probably speak about that first. So because of our own internal controls, as far as the relationship with the community and the police, we have strict, robust internal controls as to how we handle information for that very same issue you raised in terms of trust and confidence. And we have a selective group of individuals who are charged with that handling of that type of information, who have been properly trained to handle that information. The issue around community policing, I suppose, and getting in with the community, speaking to members of the community, well, that happens on a daily basis, and what we do is channel that information that's provided to those through the community police officers. We channel that in single conduit into this team or this unit I mentioned in terms of having that internal control mechanism in place. What I will say in addition to that is if persons want to provide information, when members of the community provide information, and I'll use an example, if someone said something to me, I'll ask them, who else have you spoken to? Who else have you given this information to? Because sometimes it comes, you may think it's just to you, but actually if you've spoken to 4 or 5 other persons, then they get back into the community and they say the police disclose that information. So we we want to encourage members of the public to speak to our police officers. All I would say is to make sure, if you're speaking to our police officers, but just make sure that you haven't said that to 4 or 5 other persons. So that's just to have that in the information management control systems. As far as the trust and confidence overall, well, I've said it, in fact, it is on one of my strategic priorities in terms of trust and confidence in the police service. Instilling public trust and confidence is huge. We cannot we cannot investigate cases, we cannot get the cooperation from members of the public if they don't have the confidence and provide the information they provide is held in a very delicate manner. Moving to the witness aspect of it is really challenging in such a small environment to get people to cooperate and provide witness statements that prepare to come to court. So we have to utilize some of our existing legislation to see how those legislation can be utilized to protect those persons who want to do good, want to provide evidence before the court, and they may have to give their whole entire livelihood up or livelihoods up to do so. So under the Justice Protection Act, that's one avenue that could be explored. I can't speak about that other than just to say there's a Justice Protection Act. I won't speak any more about it. There's also witness anonymity, the Witness Anonymity Act. So that's another avenue persons can explore to see how can we utilize those type of legislations specifically around witnesses, because there's a clear distinction between a witness and someone providing information.
Final question. Her Excellency the Governor talked about possible changes going forward, possible legislation. My question for all the parliamentarians and the members of the legislature is, how do you propose to balance those amendments that you think are needed for our protection against our constitutional and legal rights to defend ourselves in cases of these types of danger?
Well, I think the sort of legislation we are looking at are things like the firearms legislation, the gangs legislation, etc. And of course, whenever we look at new legislative changes, we would make absolutely sure that they are in keeping with international practice and that they are there to serve the needs and to protect the community. Is that what you meant by that question?
I wanted to know how you propose to balance the rights of people to defend themselves if they're faced with this danger. When you make these amendments, of course, they are being contemplated in an environment where a tragic incident has happened and there's this need, urgency for something to be done. Mm-hmm. So although something urgently needs to be done, some thought also has to be given into the type of amendments that are made to legislation or contemplated for a constitution and how those changes would then impact the constitutional and legal rights of members of the public to defend themselves in these types of situations when they feel they're in danger or their families are in danger.
Now, whatever legislative changes we bring into force will be fully in keeping with the constitutional requirements here in Cayman.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lindsay, from Loop News. Just a quick summary before we go. The Premier, the Honourable Juliana O'Connolly, has announced that up to, in response to this incident at the Ed Bush playing field where there was indiscriminate shooting and 7 people got shot, a shocking incident, and entire government is united that $200,000 is going to be put forward, up to $200,000, leading to the arrest.
250.
Well, 50,000 from Crime Stoppers. So I will add, so that's an addition. So I will just give those numbers out quickly. If anyone does have information, please call 911 or the West Bay Police Station at 949-3999 or directly to the RCIPS via the confidential tip line 949-7777. You can also go to the Cayman Crime Stoppers online to give your information there. And as stated, the combined total $250,000 for information leading to an arrest. At this point, I wonder whether I should just offer the panel the opportunity to make any closing remarks. As we can see, we've got a completely united front, all members of the government and the governor and the backbench all here in support. Any other final comments before we go?
Well, just to reiterate our sympathy and fellow feeling with everybody affected, our gratitude to those who help us respond, and our absolute categoric determination to work with all of you to find solutions, to catch the people who've done this, and to make sure that this is not a direction in which Cayman goes in the future. Honourable Premier.
Premier, Honourable Chidera Konkon.
I can round up, but I'll have other occasions. I think it would be remiss of me if I didn't give way to Mr. Compass, who's standing up there looking ever so pitiful to ask a question.
We've got one from Mr. Andrew Harris from the Compass. Double dipping the Compass, but anyway.
I thank you.
It'll take a long time, Mr. Harris.
And for your graciousness, I promise I won't direct my questions to you. Very quickly, perhaps this is to either Ms. Lizette Yearwood or someone else. Granted, several of my other questions were asked. We received reports from several persons who stated that they went to get treatment at the emergency section last night, separate and aside from the incident, and returned away because the staff was incapable of handling anything outside of the incident. Can you speak to the capacity of the HSA and whether or not there are proper spill-out programs?
Ms. Lizette, if you choose to respond, you can come up to the podium here. I'll make way for you. Thank you for that question. We have a number of high-level government officials also in the audience too, including the Deputy Governor, Honourable Frans Manderson, our Cabinet Secretary, and many other people in the audience. Ms. Lizette.
Thank you very much for that question, sir. The HSA has a national strategic plan in order to respond to any sort of mass casualties, and that also includes all of the private sector providers as well. So the individuals that would have come to the hospital, they were quickly triaged and treated. A number came in right away. The walk-in wounded came in via private car. They were treated, and the trauma rooms were readied for the two that were coming in by ambulance. And everything went above board. Everything, all the patients that were there at the hospital were treated. There were some that were admitted and some that were kept in observation in the emergency room until this morning.
Sorry, the question was for the persons who were separate from that incident. I spoke to one gentleman who told me he was turned away and told he'd have to go to another doctor because he couldn't be treated because the hospital did not have the capacity to treat anyone that was not directly related to the incident last night.
Okay, I'm not aware of any private, any individual who was turned away for a private provider. Everybody that came were seen. Now, individuals may have decided they didn't want to wait because, as you can appreciate, 5 persons coming in with lots of relatives, there was a bit of a wait period. They may have gone away on their own, but they were not turned away that I'm aware of.
Commissioner Walton, thank you very much. Commissioner Walton, since January, we've had one murder, 4 incidents that we know of in the media of shots being fired, another 4 instances of woundings that we're aware of, and another 2 robberies that we're aware of, all violent incidents, all of which involved guns. During our first roundtable, you stated that the police had a very robust policing program to tackle firearms incident. 3 months later, here we are in a watershed moment. Are the capabilities of the police strong enough to protect the public?
Absolutely. So you would have seen that we've made some arrests. We've recovered 2 guns, really dangerous guns. One of those weapons had an extended cab that was capable of holding 27 rounds just in the magazine alone. That was back in January. And we recovered one just over a week and a half ago in police operations. So the short answer is absolutely. I have every degree of trust and confidence in my team, my firearms team, and the command team that commands that team, as well as my investigative crime task force and investigators involved in tackling this issue around firearms in the Cayman Islands.
And my
Thank
final
you,
question.
Sorry, no, that's a
final question
is
is bail. The bail law. Every single time we have an instance where we have either a murder or a shooting or something of the sort, under all of our comment section, it's always the same thing. They're going to get arrested, they're going to go to the court, and give them 2 weeks later, they'll be back on the road in bail. What will be done to address the bail law to ensure that people who are arrested for dangerous offenses are held for longer periods of time? To anyone who is able to answer.
Well, I think, do you want to go?
Well, I think the principle is that everyone is entitled to bail. You start with that. Everyone is entitled to bail, and then you have a number of considerations, such as the nature of the offense, the seriousness, the gravity, whether the person is a flight risk, and you move from there. So you obviously there will be a consideration to, as far as the bail law, what would prevent that person or persons from being bailed. Even if they were given bail, either by the police or by the court, then there are conditions that are imposed, whether it's a EM tag or a curfew condition, but there would be conditions that are imposed as part of any bail condition.
Thank you very much, Commissioner, and thank you, everybody in the media, for those questions that you've ordered and submitted as well. Honourable Premier, do you want to make a final remark, or shall we just thank everybody for joining us here at the press?
I think we should thank everyone for joining us and allow the police commissioner to go do what you do best, solve crime.
Solve crime. Well, thanks everybody for joining us at this special press briefing. There's bound to be more information coming out in the days ahead of us, and if you can help, please remember that there's a large reward offered at the present time, and we hope that the people who are responsible for this terrible incident are brought to justice swiftly. With that, I think we'll conclude the press briefing, and thank you everybody who joined us here today.
Thank you.
Thank you.